If it was illegal, immoral, or self-destructive, my family had it covered. Amidst the alcoholics, the junkies, dropouts, and womanizers, there were two that stood out: my parents. To many, they were the villains. Dad was in the federal penitentiary for 33 of my first 35 years for bank robbery, but we kept him updated on our lives through phone calls, letters, photos, and even weekend visits. I was basically raised by a single mother. And she may have been the baddest of the bad, but I loved my mom, and she loved me. We never really had much money. We lived in a one-bedroom house in South Oak Cliff, right across the street from Loreland Cemetery. When I was about 7, Mom quit her regular 9 to 5 to take up shoplifting as a career because it was more lucrative. No stranger to crime, she fenced men's and women's designer clothes on the black market. It was good money, more than she knew what to do with. But my imagination was pretty limitless, and so was my ever-expanding toy collection. We may have stolen things, but we worked hard for them. I lent a hand by being Mom's deceptively distracting lookout, that annoying kid that runs around the store and everyone's wondering where their parents are. That was me. And while everyone was busy watching me, she was busy filling her oversized purse. One time she had me stay in the car and wait for her. I sat hunkered down real low. I peered over the seat and watched as she was taken down by 2 officers. She was dragged back into the store, kicking and screaming. Unfazed by what I had witnessed, I got out of the car, called my grandmother from a payphone inside the mall, and just waited for her to come pick me up. A day later, Mom made bail, and it was back to business as usual. She sold her wares to anyone that was willing to pay, even drug dealers. One dealer in particular ran a very small operation out of an East Dallas apartment. We were there the night that he was raided by the police. Mom was in the back bedroom finishing up her business while I was watching Michael Jackson's Thriller on MTV in the living room. Suddenly, the front door just came crashing down. They drug Mom out in handcuffs, set her on the couch beside me. She was frantic. I was calm, cool. Flat out lied to the cops. Told them that we lived in the complex, we just couldn't afford cable. And as Duran Duran would say, I wanted my MTV. They actually bought it, and we were released. Mom gave up shoplifting after that, figuring it was time to find a new line of work. Hooking up with connections that she had made in the Dallas underground, she began pushing heroin. She did her fair share of it, too. She ran her base of operations out of our very small one-bedroom house. So it's easy to see why I fell into my own bad habits. My 15-year-old cousin handed me my first joint when I was 8. I lost the next several years of my life to a blur of drugs and petty crime. I snorted cocaine a few times, but I didn't really like the burn. Huffed paint, tried speed, acid, before eventually discovering crack. I even got busted for shoplifting. Life was pretty bleak. At 13, I was scoring crack from a dealer I didn't know in a South Dallas dive hotel that rented rooms by the hour. I went into the bathroom to take my hits on the pipe when this woman just accidentally walked in. And at first, she excused herself. She didn't really pay much attention to me. But then she stopped. She opened the door. She looked me square in the eye. And she said, "Boy, you don't belong here. You need to go on." It was the first time I really felt ashamed of myself. I paused. But hell, I had just paid $20 for those rocks. Every coin has 2 sides. And while one side of mine was seriously damaged, the other was bright, shiny. A large portion of the money that my mom made from stealing and dealing went to pay for my private school education that she insisted that I receive. I managed to maintain relatively good grades, despite the life that I was leading outside of school. I made the AB honor roll a few times, became the educational video game tester of my junior high. I even made the football team. She loved to brag about my accomplishments, and while she knew about the bad things I did, she never harped on me. If there was one thing that she wasn't, it was a hypocrite. That day in the hotel, I was at odds with myself. Which of these two very different personas was the real me? I began to have reservations about my darker side and who I was becoming. Was I the junkie, or was I the scholar? My entire family was the former, but I felt like the latter better defined me, as if I was only doing those things so that I could fit in with them. As for the nameless crackhead that told me that I needed to go on, well, she helped flip the switch, but she doesn't get all of the credit. Dysfunctional as they were, my parents deserve a bit too. For all their faults, all their mistakes, the one thing that they did right was love me. They did it wholeheartedly, patiently, and with a tremendous amount of faith. They supported me throughout all of those terrible decisions, and they pushed me to make better ones for myself. Their biggest dream was that I wouldn't turn out like them. And I was frequently reminded that I was going to be the only good thing they ever did for this world. But hey, no pressure. Their patience eventually did pay off. In high school, I began to focus on getting away, and in order to make their dream for me a reality, I had to distance myself from their world. College was the answer. I matriculated at 17, joined a fraternity at 18, and carried a 4.0 GPA. My plan was working, and though I didn't see my mother often, she was prouder than ever of the person that I had chosen to be. Mom surrounded herself within a world of shit. But ironically, it was pancreatic cancer that eventually killed her. I was 20. She was on her deathbed when I was accidentally let in on an old family secret. While it was known that my mother's father was a drunken brute that loved to beat on his wife and 3 daughters, it was a very well hidden fact that the abuse had actually left my mother incapable of bearing children. My grandmother delivered the news. Michael, you're adopted. Of all the thoughts that went through my head at that very moment, the one that puzzled me the most, how in the hell did a drug dealer and a bank robber ever adopt a kid? Well, as it turns out, before robbing banks, my father was a successful welder. And before all the shoplifting and drugs, my mother was a beautician. She stayed very busy in the 70s with all those feathered hairdos. And one of her regulars knew of a young woman who was pregnant with her 4th child. She was single, barely able to provide for the 3 she had. So imagine her surprise when a blue-collared beautician and welder showed up at her front doorstep just wanting to help. Since there was no sperm donor to claim me, they decided that when I was born, my adopted father would pin his name to my birth certificate. The original, which contained my birth mother's name, was to be hidden from me forever. And instead, one with my adopted mother's name was issued. But so many things finally made sense. Amidst the chaos and corruption that consumed my family, they always held out hope for me. They encouraged me to be better. They taught me to step out from their shadows. And most importantly, they had the faith that I would. In their eyes, I was different because I wasn't a part of them genetically. They believed that the bad things I had done were nothing more than learned behavior. And if it could be learned, then it could be unlearned through better teachings by better teachers than themselves. Hence the private Catholic school, with its mandatory lessons in theology and morality. My parents accepted my failures as their own, and they credited me with my successes. Hard work, perseverance, and a little luck helped give me the life of my parents' dreams. I graduated college more than 15 years ago. Today, I'm happily married and have 2 boys of my own, both of whom are completely ignorant of the life that I once led. for two reasons. First, because I haven't told them. But more importantly, because their lives are so far removed from the dangers and influences of my own childhood. My parents wanted me to be nothing like them, and in some regards, I have failed. I too dream of a better life for my children and will do whatever I believe to be quintessential to provide them with their own opportunities. I accept their failures as my shortcomings as a father, and I push them to be better than me. I have taught them that our family name isn't just a moniker. It's something that they should strive to be, to dig deep, to dream big, and ultimately they will find out that they are more.